What's up, everybody? I'm Metal Nick,
I'm Jeff Grindstoffer.
and welcome to episode number 8 of Vinyl Bang. Today we are discussing first albums, meaning the first release by this a particular artist, their very first album. Jeff came up with this idea. Jeff, how did you come up with this one?
Well, okay. One of the recurring discussions that my best friend Brad Jamerson and I have is just debating the importance of the debut album from a band and the sophomore album from a band as to which one is the better of the two. And a lot of the discussions that we would have were always bands from the 90s, and they were like, the Pearl Jam albums, which whether 10 or Versus was better, or Stone Temple Pilots, whether it was Core or Purple, or just the difference between the debut album and whenever the band was finding their sound. And generally the sophomore album is a lot of times, majority of the time, not all the time, but the sophomore album is usually whenever the bands find their sound and really fine tune everything in, and just that is the superior album as opposed to the debut album. So whenever I brought this idea up to Nick, about which one was the better, whether it was the debut or the sophomore album, he's like, let's do an episode about debut albums. And it's a good one. I mean, we've got some really, really good albums here. And not really to have a debate as to which one is better, but just these albums are solid.
Yeah.
Every one of these albums are just phenomenal.
It's funny you say that, because there's a gentleman by the name of Ray that I always have this conversation with about what album is best, the first or the second album with particular bands, for that very thing that you said right there, because the second album is when a band usually finds their sound. So I actually discuss a particular band on this episode that me and Ray have had many arguments over which album was the better one. So Go ahead, Jeff. You want to start things off?
I will start things off. Kicking off the episode with one of the first grunge albums that I ever heard in the early 90s, 91 or 92. Alice in Chains' Facelift. This is just, such a landmark album. This is a lot of memories behind this album whenever it came out, whenever I was a teenager, growing up and finding who I was musically, what was important to me, what was going to be monuments in my life musically. This is absolutely one of them. And this is one of those where you could argue about whether Dirt was better or Facelift or whatever, but we're not getting into that. This is just taking this album as it is. This album is so good. There are so many. I don't think there's a bad album on this or bad song on this album. It is just so good. This particular pressing was released in 2020. It was originally released the album itself was originally released in Brazil, the UK, and Europe in 1990 with the actual artwork, with this actual artwork. Whenever the album was released in the US, the album was released in a jacket for the 12-inch single for We Die Young. So if you ever go to a record store and find an original single for this, or an original 12-inch for the single We Die Young, pick it up, because there's a pretty good chance that the original pressings from 1990 are in that jacket, which is weird. Like, I don't know why the label itself would release it in a single, but there's a sticker on the front that says, "Here we go. This is a full album in a 12-inch sleeve." And in parentheses, it says, "Even major labels can be cost efficient." And I didn't know that. I had no idea that the original US pressings weren't in the original artwork. They were in a completely different, promotional single for We Die Young. So
That's insane.
That was a fun little thing to find out.
Yeah.
The US kind of got gypped a little bit. Another cool thing about this particular pressing, it's a misprint. There's a misprint on the first disc, which has the first 3 tracks of the album. I'll see if I can maneuver this correctly. The title for Man in the Box is Man in a Box. not Man in the Box, which is the actual name of the track. But yeah, I know I can't focus in there, but the second song, Man in a Box. So that's fun. A little little Easter egg.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
That is actually an absolute amazing debut album. I have fond memories of listening to that album in my parents' stereo as a kid. My sister had that CD, so I used to take her stuff a lot and listen. That album was just, in my opinion, a great fucking record that took the world by storm. But to answer your question, Dirt is definitely better.
Moving on. Dirt's phenomenal. It is. It really is.
So like album. Down to the nitty gritty. I mean, as a kid, most people who knew me, like Nirvana was my band. Like I love Nirvana so much, but like when it was all said and done and grunge was kind of dead, like Alice in Chains was my favorite band from that, like the big four of the grunge bands from Seattle. Like I think they were quality albums. Dirt is always like it's a desert album island for me for sure. Like there's something about that record that I was about to go into middle school, so it just like hit me in the heart with all these his notes and just Lane just guy's got a great voice and some brilliant lyrics and then yeah, Alice in Chains was just one incredible band. I'm very jealous of that photo of you and Jerry Cantrell and Greg Puciato. It's quite amazing that you got
meeting Jerry Cantrell was definitely like I don't get starstruck very often, but I was like, holy shit, dude, you're Jerry Cantrell.
Yeah,
that was incredible. One thing about Alice in Chains that I've noticed, the warehouse that I work in, I make playlists where I have everything from Creedence to Lady Gaga to Beastie Boys to anything that's like widely accepted. I've never heard a complaint about any of the Alice in Chains songs where people complain about Soundgarden or they don't like this Pearl Jam song or Nirvana's overrated or whatever. I mean, Alice in Chains is like usually generally accepted by everybody because it just they don't they don't have a bad song.
They're working man's band. Yeah,
absolutely, a working man's band. There you go.
They really are. All right, moving on. My first contribution to this episode, surprisingly, I can't believe this is the first time I'm talking about this band on this show, but Beastie Boys, Licensed to Ill. It's one of my favorite bands, if you know me pretty well. Their debut album, I know they had some punk EPs out before. This is a full length, folks. So let's put that battle to rest there, argument to rest. But man, this album is just incredible. Like I was a young kid when this came out. My sister had it. The one album I remember the one song I remember more than anything was Brass Monkey. Just the saxophone intro was big to me because my father played saxophone. But it's not a bad song on this album. There are a couple tracks I do choose to skip nowadays, all these years later. But other than that, this is a great record. I mean, it's not my favorite Beastie Boys album by far, but as far as debut albums, like in 1986, people who don't really know this too much, but hip hop was not as big as it was today back then. And for them to get the production that they were able to get, Rick Rubin produced this album, and it's bassy as shit. It sounds fucking great. They use those 808s like it's nobody's fucking business. For some metalheads, I don't probably know this. Kerry King appears on No Sleep Till Brooklyn. He does the guitar solo. He's even in the music video for it. They got a couple Led Zeppelin samples and some AC/DC samples on this album. But this is a great record for a debut album for a band that became one of the biggest hip hop acts and out there. Rest in peace to MCA. I wish I could have seen this band live. I did actually get to see him speak in person once about Tibet back in '98 in the Capitol Steps in DC. But other than that, I was never fortunate enough to see this band live. But there's quite a few videos of them online, and I don't know. This album, it's great. It's one of those records that I think a lot of people own it. I think a lot of people like Fight for Your Right the most, but Rhyming and Stealing, the new style. Jesus Christ, that song's been seen 3 times by Beastie Boys at least. Posse and Effects, Slow Ride, Paul Revere, for sure.
So good.
Brass Monkey, Slow and Low, Time to Get Ill. I mean, there's Hold It Now, Hit It. There's some bangers on this fucking record if you've never listened to this. But yeah, it's ridiculous because I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan, and we're 8 episodes deep, and this is the first time I'm talking about this band. So I've got a lot. I've got some really. This is an OG pressing too, by the way. It's still in its wrapper. I'm not gonna try to rip this sticker off, but there's some photos of them and shit. But Def Jam. Yeah, I've got some real gems in my collection that when we get to an episode, I'm going to talk about it. But yeah.
As far as if you haven't heard Ill Communication, stop it. Or License to Ill, stop it. You need to go listen to that album right now.
Yeah,
you're doing life all wrong.
Yeah, none of this like fuck rap and hip hop bullshit like this. It's a good fucking record. Like they were young when they put this one out, so like you got to imagine like there's a lot of pop culture references or them just being goofy young kids from New York. But like,
right,
this album is just like I said in 1986. Like hip hop wasn't a big thing like it is now, and especially like the way Rick Rubin like laid that extra layer of bass on that record, like. They didn't sound like that on any of their other albums. Like they didn't go bass heavy like that ever again. They do on certain songs, but like not like to the extent that it was on License to Ill. It's just like I love being in a car with a good stereo and listening to that album, especially the new style when that fucking beat breaks in at the end. I'm just like, it's incredible, man.
It's quite an experience. Around that time, wasn't it true that like were they sued by Budweiser? Because of how often they mentioned Budweiser on that album.
I don't know. Maybe
because I've heard that. I mean, I don't know if that was like just a hearsay or whatever, but they do mention Budweiser a lot.
They do. They talk about White Castle. They talk about
we had Scorpios.
Yeah, certain streets that in New York because of where the ladies of the night hang out. They talk about it all, man. They do.
Right. Such a good album.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's an OG press, man. That's awesome.
Yes. I found that at Celebrated Summer in Baltimore.
Nice.
Yeah.
And as far as you never mentioning the Beastie Boys up until the 8th episode of Vinyl Bang, like anytime I ever hear Beastie Boys, I always affiliate you with it. You're such an avid,
I'm sure most people do.
Beastie Boys fan.
I'm sure most people do. Like I talk about them way too much, and they're not even a band anymore. I mean, but they were a great band. I mean, they had some awesome music, and it just puts me in a great mood when I listen to them. They were a fun fucking band to listen to, and like I said, I'm bummed I never got to see them live.
I never did either.
Yeah, they've got a lot of good footage of shows online that you can check out. I mean, it's a really good one in Philadelphia from 1998, like when Hello Nasty dropped. It's great. It's really cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on from that to keep up with the hip hop aspect of everything. My next album, as far as debuts, this was a banger.
Yeah,
still is a banger. This is still one of my go-to albums as far as hip hop.
Fuck yes.
Dr. Dre, The Chronic. I mean, you really do not get any better than this album. It is just quintessential hip hop 90s. Anytime I ever talk to anybody about hip hop or rap or whatever, it's always, if it's not from the 90s, it's not any good. And majority of the time, that's the case. I mean, you get random ones here and there, like Run the Jewels, that's come out in the last 10 years that are good. But I mean, majority of the stuff that's come out now, I don't care for at all. But the 90s, this album in particular, it is just
fuck.
So good. This album is so good. This particular pressing was the 8th time this album has been pressed, and it was a 2021 remaster. And it sounds incredible. It really does. It sounds awesome. Another copy of this I have in my collection came from Target. It's a Target exclusive. That is a clear vinyl, and it's not open. I haven't opened it. There's no reason for me to open it because I have this copy that that I listen to, but just to have the completist in me, and I needed to go to Target to buy toilet paper or whatever it was. Like, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and pick up a clear copy of the Chronic, because why not? Why not have multiple copies of this album? This past year on Record Store Day, they did a special re-release of the Long Box.
Killer.
On CD, and this again is not opened, it's sealed, but I had to have a copy of it just because it's like I said, one of my favorite albums of all time, and just to have a long box copy of it, I mean, that's that's more nostalgic than anything, from having the long boxes back in the 90s. But yeah, this album is so good, and this long box, actually, it has rolling papers.
Nice.
Yeah, if I were to open it up and I could take the rolling papers and enjoy some of the devil's lettuce, some of the Chronic, as it were, but no, it'll stay sealed and just sit on the shelf, and I'll be the envy of everybody on the block because I have the Chronic in a long box version. But yeah, that album is that was Snoop's debut, right?
I think him and Dre were on the soundtrack to, I can't remember what movie. It was like 187 on a Cop was the name of the song, and that came out before the Chronic came out.
Oh, okay.
But then like most of the world heard Snoop from that. But absolutely, man. Again, that's another one that I have fond memories of, like sitting in front of my parents' stereo listening to. My sister came home with that CD, and I would listen to that album up and down, and I did not know that was a pot leaf on the CD. And I remember my sister told me a story of like after I put the CD away and walked away, my dad came and looked at it and stared at that CD for like a couple minutes, and she told me, she was like, "Do you not know what that is?" I'm like, "No." And then she had to smarten me up on everything that would, I was just a dumb young kid. I didn't know anything about drugs or pot or anything like that. So I was very naive. But man, that record, I mean,
it's so good.
A majority of my life, I was listening to metal. I'd listen to some hip hop, but not to the extent that what it started to become after I heard that album. And it's not like the greatest album of all time. It's one of my top 10 for sure. It's not my favorite hip hop album, but like I for a while was tell people like that's like my go-to. That record was just so fucking perfect. And then what, it was like a year or two later, Doggy Style came out, and it was just, I mean, Death Row was like on fire.
Oh, sure.
And Dre just, being at the center of it, in my opinion, really. Like, I know Ice Cube was out there putting out great shit at the same time, but and even Eazy-E, but we'll get on all that when we do our hip hop episode, because man, I can go for hours about that.
That's coming. The hip hop episode's coming.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on. So first albums. I can't do this episode without talking about Rage Against the Machine. This is their debut album. Came out in 1992 on Epic Records. Got some special appearances by everybody's favorite Maynard James Keenan from Tool. Bomb Track, Killing in the Name, Take the Power Back, Settle for Nothing, Bullet in the Head, Know Your Enemy, Wake Up, Fistful of Steel, Township Rebellion. I love that fucking song. And Freedom. From start to finish, I think this album was a fucking banger. It's a great debut album. I remember when Evil Empire came out, I bought this first just to be sure that, I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, oh, the second album's better. And the second album was great. Don't get me wrong. I loved Evil Empire, but I have fond memories of me and my friend Chris walking around by my pond and singing lyrics from this song over and over again. Like this was a killer fucking record. I saw them in 97 with Wu-Tang. I have a doormat of the ticket stub that I have from that show, but this was a great record. I was fortunate enough to see them twice a couple years ago on their final tour that they did. As far as debut albums, like it doesn't get better than this, really. I think a lot of bands will probably tell you that this was a very influential album on them. I think it was recorded at Sound City, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of bands said after they heard Nevermind, they went and recorded because of that. But
right.
I love this band a lot. They were very influential to me when I was a young teenager, and was fortunate enough to see them live a couple times. But Yeah. There's just
that debut album is phenomenal. I mean, I remember my first time hearing it, just being blown away by the sounds of Tom Morello, and you know, that was I almost want to say that was my first experience with rap being incorporated with metal, you know, with heavier music. You know,
yeah.
it was like, what is this? You know, it's like it's taking two different genres and putting them together, and it just that was so inspiring for me, you know, as a teenager to hear that album for the first time. And
I thought it was
definitely
groundbreaking what they were doing.
Do what?
I thought it was groundbreaking what they were doing. I had a lot of people tell me years later Tom Morello was just a big ripoff artist of Bruce Springsteen riffs, and maybe he was, but like, you know, he was a little Jimi Hendrixy on his own with his stuff. I mean, it was a very unique thing that he was doing. I mean, we were just talking about this earlier. Like I had arguments with a friend that he would say Evil Empire is better than this album, and I'm just like,
no.
you know, he heard Evil Empire first, but like I get it. I think Evil Empire is a great album. I don't think it's a solid album from start to finish like this one is, but you know, like it was a groundbreaking record. There was like Faith No More may have been like the only band that did anything a little like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean,
hip hop, but like, you know,
I mean, yeah, Faith No More's biggest thing was Epic. You know, I mean, like the whole rap whatever thing. But as far as incorporating an entire album of that, you know, especially with the sounds that Morello was making with his guitar, nobody was doing that at that time. Nobody was doing the things that Tom Morello was doing with his guitar. Even today, you know, people aren't doing what Rage Against the Machine did. And yeah, that's a phenomenal first album. And Wake Up is one of my favorite Rage Against the Machine songs of all time.
Yeah,
you know, cool. That album is so good.
The deep cut.
It is for sure. I never saw them in the 90s. I never got to see them in their first round, but in 2021, whenever they played their first show in 11 years, I saw the first show of that tour in Alpine Valley, and they opened up with Bomb Track, and it was just, they were on fire.
Yeah,
it was such a good show. You know, for me, missing out on them as a teenager and not seeing them until I was in my 40s, you know, it was a stellar show. Zach De La Rocha hadn't injured his ankle or cut his Achilles tendon or whatever, and he was up running around and just all over the stage, and the energy was just it was intense. You know, It was great. It was a phenomenal show.
I had two separate people hit me up 2 days in a row they played 2 nights in DC, and then man, yeah, that was great. I was they played every song I wanted to hear off of every album, so I was just very impressed with what they brought it. They, you know, and they didn't have like a giant amp setup. It was very small, stripped down setup on stage, and they sounded like $1 million up there. I thought it was great. Absolutely. Really good. They did a good job.
Absolutely. That was a good tour.
All right.
So moving on. My next album is speaking of bands that are doing their own thing and nobody quite sounds like them, and innovating new sounds that nobody will ever imitate. Primus Frizzle Fry. Primus is absolutely one of my favorite bands of all time. They just announced a new tour from this year, and I'm going to go see them twice on this tour, which will be my 23rd and 24th time seeing Primus since 1996. First time I saw Primus, they were playing a hippie festival. They played right before Neil Young. That was my very first time seeing Primus in '96. The band is open for, they've toured with everybody. You know, I saw them open for Slayer. They're all over the place. This band doesn't really have a genre. They don't really have a specific categorization to them. But this is a first press OG 1990 pressing of Frizzle Fry. In 1990, they did 11 pressings of this album. 11 different colors. They were anywhere ranging from green translucent to a standard black. The color scheme for this pressing was all over the place. 8 of the pressings were in the US and 3 of them were in Europe. And this particular pressing which is only the second time I've ever taken this out of the jacket. And it looks pink. I know, because all my red albums look pink. I'm like going to blacklight room or something one of these days where red actually looks red. But this is the translucent red pressing of Frizzle Fry. Again, as far as first albums and comparing them to the second albums, this was not my first impression of Primus. I discovered Primus whenever I saw the video for Jerry Was a Race Car Driver from Sailing the Seas of Cheese, which is my favorite album from Primus. But Frizzle Fry has its higher notes, specifically, John the Fisherman, Pudding Time, Herald of the Rocks, Too Many Puppies. I mean,
Herald of the fucking Rocks, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That song, man. That's a great fucking record. Very underrated album.
It is.
And much like you, I discovered them from Pork Soda. Even though I guess I'd heard Tommy's a Race Car or Tommy the Cat. I think I heard, which was on the Bill and Ted's soundtrack.
Tommy the Cat.
Okay, I heard that, but I guess I didn't pay attention too much attention to it. When I was in middle school, I remember seeing My Name Is Mud all over MTV and be like, this band is so fucking wild. Like, I've never heard anything like this before.
Right. But this is the first pressing. This pressing is a 2002 remaster. This is the one that I listened to. This is the one that gets on the turntable. The other one stays in the sleeve, in the jacket. And again, this was found secondhand at a record store several years ago. But again, I had to have a long box copy of Frizzle Fry just for the aesthetic, nostalgic 1990s, what I grew up with. Had to have this on long box. There was nothing in it, no CD or anything, but just to have the artwork in this, long box format is just phenomenal. So, yep.
Dude, I fucking that. I love that they have a best of called "They All Can't Be Zingers," and all those fucking songs on that album are fucking bangers too. But
zingers, yeah.
I mean, like the stuff that's on Frizzle Fry is great, and much like you, I own like a later pressing of it because like I don't care. When we were in, I was telling this in the Adam episode when we were in at Sit and Spin and we saw an OG pressing of Pork Soda, and I think it was just the standard black, but I've seen like the brown one. The thing that impresses me so much is that label. It's called Prawn Song, and it's like a little like with like a crayfish, but it's like the Led Zeppelin. Yeah, man, like that.
This is what you're talking about. This is the actual OG pressing.
My sister had like a little like weird like booklet CD of that, and that record was just. It's on DMV. I always think about that song. That God, he's so fucking unique and awesome. And
yeah,
they're an incredible band. But like Frizzle Fry is such a fucking good record. Like it's not my favorite either, but I think I'm like you, Sailing the Sea of Cheese. But there's some good fucking songs on Frizzle Fry. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, it's Primus,
and you
can't really go wrong with Primus.
Live band wise, they're fucking amazing. Like
dude. Yeah, watching Claypool perform is just intricacies of his, bass playing. And
he's a show off, and he knows it.
He knows it. I met him. I did a VIP thing in 2015 or 2017. Sorry, when I did a VIP meet and greet with him, and I got to have my picture taken with Les, and there were like 30 or 40 or however many of us. But whenever people went up to shake his hand, he, of course, wouldn't. He didn't. Those are his, money makers. I mean, that's his livelihood. He would fist bump everybody. He would fist bump. He wouldn't shake hands with anybody, which understandable, completely understandable. I'd hate to be the guy to break, Les's pinky and he can't play that night. Or whatever.
Yeah, all it takes is the wrong drunk motherfucker to be like, "What's up, motherfucker?" And he's like, "Ah,"
Yeah.
That happens, man.
Don't want to be the guy to injure Les Claypool, but that band is just they have their
like
own.
Larry David's injuring Shaq. All right. All right, moving on here. My third pick in this category of first albums is from a band that I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of this band, but this album is incredible, actually. And again, I know they had an EP before they put this out. This is a full-length album, their first full-length. The Mars Volta, Deloused in the Comatorium. I think I'm saying that correctly. I discovered this band. The band before this was at the drive-in, and I was working at a Tower Records, and I remember just being so like amazed by like what I was hearing, and like the other artwork to this, but this band, they're for proggy music, for fans of progressive stuff like that. Like this band is it. Like they're like all over the fucking place. They're really good songwriters. I know not everybody sees it that way, but like you just open your mind and you can hear what the great shit that these guys do. This is a repress. I got this. It's like a 2021 Clouds Hill Records repressed this album. One is gold, and I don't know what that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be dark green. So I don't know if you could see that. The OG vinyl was pressed on 200 grams silver picture disc by Gold Standard Laboratories. The album, majority of like the CDs and all that was on Universal Records. Like I said, these guys were, when At the Drive-In broke up, this band and Sparta happened, and I think this band was probably the more popular of the two. But I was working at a Hot Topic at the time, and I remember they would play a lot of songs off this record. And then I have two other friends, Katie and Eric, shout out to them, who they were big Mars Volta fans. They really enjoyed this album and the next few ones that they had put out. But this, I know, Jeff, you're into a lot of like the proggy stuff, and like I always say, the Bedlam and Goliath is my favorite one by them. There's just the drumming on that record is unexplainable, really.
Mm-hmm.
But this band alone, this guy's got a very unique vocal style. I've always appreciated what he's, his contribution to the music scene with this record. The two of them actually is Omar and I can't forget Cedric. They've had some really good musicians play on all the Mars Volta albums throughout the years, and even performed live with them. I think they appeared on Blood Mountain on a couple songs. And
really,
yeah, Cedric's on one of them, and that song Pendulous Skin, the gentleman who played the keyboards for Mars Volta, who passed away a couple years ago, he's on that song. But yeah, I can't find the track. Was Roulette Dares. There's another one in here that I love a lot. This Apparatus Must Be Unearthed. I mean, from start to finish, there's a great song. This is a great album, but like those two songs in particular, they're the ones that stand out to me the most. Like this album, this band in general was just, very unique, very special. I've got a lot of friends that were like hound me because I didn't listen to them for so many years. And when I finally did get into them, I was way too late. But I guess they're reuniting and playing shows now again. My buddy James just went and saw them, I think, last year. But yeah, this was a great fucking debut album. They put out many good ones after this. Like I said, the Bedlam and Goliath was probably my favorite. But yeah, if you have never heard this band before, and you want to try something new, Mars Volta, check them out.
Yeah, I'm one of the statistics. I've never really been a fan of that band. I've never given them a chance. I've never got into them. Was never subjected to them. They were never in my circle of people that I hung out with. In person, people that don't live 17 hours away from me, I'm a boy, but I was never subjected to their music. And I'm sure they're great. I just have never given them a chance.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a playlist sometime.
Okay.
You don't have to listen to every album, but there's definitely songs throughout their discography that you'd be like, oh, this is really cool, actually.
Yeah, right on. I know that the only affiliation I have with this band is Omar, the bassist. I guess he's a bass player.
Omar is the guitarist, but he probably he plays all instruments, so I'm sure he's played bass on their albums too.
He did. I believe he did bass for Crystal Fairy, which is another one of the side projects of Buzz and Dale from the Melvins. Did a project with what's her name? The vocalist from the Butcherettes.
Julia
It's
Lewis.
Omar's wife, actually. It's Omar's wife is the vocalist for the Butcherettes, and she was the vocalist for Crystal Fairy, and the project never went anywhere. They did an album, and then they were supposed to tour, and then they didn't tour, and then a lot of back and forth that I'm not going to get into. But yeah, that's the only thing I have affiliated with that band is Omar was the bassist for Crystal Fairy.
One little factoid I think I do know is somebody told me is the guitarist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers plays a solo on I think every album that they've done. I think on this album Flea plays bass. I could be wrong, but I do know that the guitarist appears on at least once on every album, and I'm probably wrong about that too. So
Frusciante?
Yes,
John Frusciante.
No, the one that was on One Hot Minute.
Dave Navarro. Dave Navarro. You know what? Wrap this up. Let's just get this over with and move to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Nobody cares about the Red Hot Chili Peppers anymore. Nick.
I never. Not me. Don't confuse me with to be a fan of that band.
No, I haven't been a fan since Blood Sugar. That was a good album. You know, they were still on drugs. Not that we condone drugs on this show with the Chronic and the good Red Hot Chili Peppers as opposed to the bad Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah. We don't even listen to Cypress Hill. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Moving on from the drugs. The next band I am going to mention in this episode is not from the 90s. They're not as widely known as Primus and Alice in Chains and this and that, but these guys are a staple in the St. Louis music scene. They are friends of mine. They've been around forever, for probably, I don't know, early 2000. The first time I saw them was in 2010, and they've been evolving their sound ever since. They're just a very heavy, very doom band, very I've seen them do a lot of covers throughout the years. Like I've seen them cover Melvin's Hooch live. I've seen them cover Nirvana, Negative Creep. I've seen them cover just so many influences through this band. And this technically is not their first album, but it was their debut release under Season of Mist under a major record label. This is The Lion's Daughter. The Lion's Daughter is a phenomenal band out of St. Louis. I'm sure they're gaining a lot of popularity throughout the years. Like whenever I was at Hell in the Harbor last year, I saw, I think, 3 people walking around with Lion's Daughter merchant or shirts on. It was like, that's awesome. You know, that it's not just like a local thing for me because, you know, a lot of people around town wear Lion's Daughter, but to see their popularity gaining and, you know, growing and just their evolving sound and phenomenal band. But their debut album, Existence is Horror, was released in 2016. This album was pressed 5 times, 4 regular pressings, and then the test press. One of the pressings is on transparent clear vinyl, which is limited to 100 units, not to be affiliated with Relapse Records, but a clear pressing of 100. And they also have a transparent green that was released on 100 units as well as blue vinyl. And the final pressing was just first on standard black vinyl. My name is mentioned in this album's liner notes because I kind of had a hand in helping them to get signed by filming them whenever they were doing a weekend tour with Pig Destroyer back in 2013. A couple of the members or a couple of the guys from Season of Mist had caught wind of the footage from the guys in Pig Destroyer and inadvertently picked them up and signed them to Season of Mist Records. So it's kind of cool to have my name listed in the liner notes of the debut major album release for these friends of mine. The band has, since the release of this album, they have started to incorporate synthesizers into their music, which is awesome aspect of it. It gives it a very like 90s horror feel to a lot of their music, which is, I'm sure, something that what they were going for whenever they were doing this. Player pressing, just because. Yeah, this album, it incorporates a couple of their older tracks, which were released on previous EPs and splits that they had done. They did a split with another band from St. Louis that's very popular called Fister. They did a split EP or a split album with them called and their masters bled for days. This album, of course, has the track "The Horror of Existence," which is a few years old. But yeah, this album in particular is my favorite, the Lion's Daughter album, just because it still incorporated their old sound before they started incorporating the new synthesizer aspect of the band, which is awesome. But it just was not, what I was used to hearing the Lion's Daughter growing up, as I was growing as a fan of the band. And a fun fact about them, I have been told by Rick Giordano, the vocalist for the band, that I was the very first person to ever buy a shirt from them at one of their shows, which is
You're gonna get this giant
here and there, but just like I bought their first shirt.
Somebody's gonna send this man a plaque in the mail for world's biggest fan. Done it all, Jeff. Jesus Christ, that's awesome. That I remember you telling me that story when they did that weekend of shows with Pig Destroyer, and then but a few years later they were on Seasons of Mist. So that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Talk about that band a lot to me over the years. I think when I came to visit you, we spent like half a day listening to them in your car. So that was some good shit. They're a great band for sure. Congrats to them for getting signed and all their success, and they're still putting stuff out, right?
Yes. Their newest album, Bathhouse, was just put out last year, and it's again just a phenomenal album.
It's good that they're still able to do this after the COVID, because that's it shows you how strong some bands are. So that's good to hear, man.
Yep. Still playing shows and still, they do. They don't tour really, but they're still playing shows, and their vocalist Rick Giordano just opened up a pizzeria in St. Louis called the Headless Bat, which is an Ozzy Osborne reference, but little plug for Rick's pizza place, the Headless Bat, which is cool. We haven't checked it out. I think we're planning a trip down there in the next week or two to go down there and eat some pizza, because I've heard nothing but good things. Like Adam Jarvis went down there, I think, around the time that they opened. It was just raving about how good this place was. So.
Well, transitioning on from what you just said about Ozzy, my next pick is the Blizzard of Oz.
All right.
Yeah, talking about first albums. I know he was in a band before this, folks. I do. Thank you for shouting at me. This was Ozzy's debut solo album. And motherfucking what a fucking album. With such jams like I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance, D, Suicide Solution. He got in a lot of trouble with that one. Mr. Crowley, which is a fucking awesome one as well. Great banger. No Bone Movies, Revelation, Mother Earth, Steal Away the Night. Randy Rhoads is on this album. Bob Daisley, Lee Kerslake is the drummer. Obviously we talked about this the other night with Adam when I guess he was talking about the Diary of a Madman and the lineup on that record. But Ozzy had some great players over the years as well. This fucking album in particular, his first solo album, had some good ones on it. It's an OG pressing from Jet Records.
Nice.
I think we were talking about this the other day with Adam when, you have these OG albums and you listen to them, you can still hear those snap, crackles, and pops on there. I love this album. This, it might be my favorite Ozzy album. No, it's not. I like Bark at the Moon. Who the fuck am I kidding? But as far as debut albums, I think most people know Crazy Train. I love Mr. Crowley. I think the solo in that song, just the synths in the beginning, everything about that song. But I Don't Know. It's a great fucking opener for an album to debut Ozzy solo shit. He put out a lot of cool stuff after this, but this was for many years, a lot of people knew Black Sabbath, and then this happened. And And then a couple of years after that, MTV got their hands on him and made him a reality star. But most metalheads knew he was our fool before all that. So,
Right. Right.
Yeah, that was a great debut album, I thought, and motherfucking Ozzy.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's Aussie. Just, one of the pioneers of the stoner metal, I guess
For
Black Sabbath
sure,
was
for
stoner
sure.
metal.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
Sabbath, I
then,
think, gets a lot of hand in that, but he was a part of it for sure.
sure. But yeah, that's a great addition to this episode for sure, as far as debut albums go.
Yeah, that was a tough one because I told you there was a lot that I had on my shelf that I was like, I'm going to talk about this on another particular episode. But I have that album in my collection, and that for debut albums, that's a fucking good one. I mean, like I want to do like it's harder to sit here and pick stuff out, but like you can't. We're talking metal here, man. Like that started it all for a lot of people, man. I think a lot of guitarists wanted to play that Crazy Train solo, like, or that fucking riff alone. I mean, Randy Rhoads was a very influential guitarist on a lot of people after that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, getting back into the more mainstream popular bands, not nearly as popular as Ozzy Osbourne or Black Sabbath. The next contribution to the next thing, Mr. Bungle. Mr. Bungle's debut Warner Brothers release. This was again, like the thing with the EPs and the stuff they done, the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny and God Damn It, I Love America, and like those were all underground tape trading days, and I don't care about that. Major release from Mr. Bungle, the self-titled album that was clearly not taking very good notes on. This is the this is the third pressing on black vinyl. This was released by Plain Recordings. The first two pressings was a picture disc and another standard black that was pressed by Warner Brothers. This is the 180 gram version. This is the version that gets played just because of the quality of it. The 180 gram generally sounds the best. 180 gram, usually the records usually sound pretty good. Yeah. The next pressings of this album were released in, I believe, 2014. They were both released on music on vinyl, which I'm not crazy about their quality. But
That's the pressing that I have, I believe.
The music on vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sound quality isn't that great, but in a pinch, it'll do. If you didn't have the 180 gram pressing. The music on vinyl did a standard black pressing and a purple pressing, a purple marbled pressing.
That's awesome.
Sides 1, 2, and 3 have audio, and then the fourth side, I'm gonna see if I can get this to show up correctly, is an etching.
Yep.
Of
there you go.
Yeah, this is an etching of the album cover. With the clown and the Mr. Bungle at the top. So pretty cool little, aesthetically pleasing etching in the vinyl. Bungle is, of course, fronted by Mike Patton, which is the greatest vocalist of all time. I don't see what's funny. Greatest vocalist of all time. Mike Patton. Yeah, this album, like I never got to see Bungle in their original lineup in the 90s before they split up, which sucks. I really wish I'd got to see them. But now they're doing the hardcore, the metal version of it, before they released this album in 1990, which is, still a great version of Bungle. And now they're starting to throw in older tracks, like the last tour they did, My Ass Is on Fire, which is fun. A fun old Mr. Bungle track that they're throwing into the new set. But yeah, this album is it was produced by John Zorn, who is an underground saxophone player, very avant-garde, very, very experimental saxophone player. But he produced this, and this was, as I said, the first album that Mr. Bungle released through Warner Brothers. It was one of the first of the three. These are three different pressings. Two of them on music on vinyl, and the other one produced by Plain Recordings. But yeah, one of my favorite bands of all time. A great record. It's very experimental. Travis Ryan was telling me a couple of times that whenever he saw them on the Disco Volante tour, that people were wanting, or they were like frat boys or whatever in the crowd yelling for the circus music, which is of course referencing the first album. They had Carousel, and just it was a very, very themed album that I guess people would affiliate with circus music.
Jeff, don't you have a promo cassette tape of that album that
I
somebody
have
sent you?
two. I have two cassette tapes. The original pressing of that album on CD and tape was the first song on the album was called Travolta, where they referenced John Travolta in the song, and I guess Travolta got word of it and put a cease and desist, and then they had to change the opening track to, I don't think you can see it, quote unquote. But yeah, so there are original pressings where the first track is labeled as Travolta, which I have a couple. I have a couple of those copies.
Yeah, I'll give you a promo cassette tape of that. Remember, I found somebody gave that to me, and I was like, I know somebody who'd take this in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. The with the hole punch in it. That's right. You did give me, Nick.
You were a little slow to catch that reference there, pal.
I was.
It's all good.
Sorry, I was listening to Cypress Hill before I do this.
All right. Moving on. This next one, again, I'm not gonna take heat over this band put out some 7 inches before this because this is their first full length, but Hatebreed, The Satisfaction is the Death of Desire.
Yes.
This, talk about a fucking banger of an album.
Oh, dude.
This one, this came out on Victory Records in 1997. It's been repressed a gajillion times. I'm not even kidding. I have a good story of seeing this band in 1999 at the 930 Club with Soulfly, Will Haven, and Neurosis, and Hatebreed stole that fucking show, man. Like, they came out and just killed it. Every song of this album's got a fucking breakdown in it. There's a lot of good sing-along songs that when they play live, people just pile up on the stage and Jamie just gives them the mic and lets them sing along. I don't know what copy. Oh, you can see there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
This, this band is just, they're fucking incredible. I don't have a single bad thing to say about Hatebreed. I know their fans are extreme. He calls them diehards, and they really are. They show up and show out at their fucking shows and throw the fuck down. Like, don't be in the way in the pit. If you don't know about their shows, man, like, you do not want to get hurt because, like, this, their fans take this shit seriously. Their music is so intense, and I see why. Like, I remember the first couple times seeing them, I went there just so hyped and just standing there all happy, and then boom, get kicked in the side of the head for no fucking reason. But it is what it is. You can't pick a fight with these guys. I love this band a lot. I met them a couple years ago. They did a tour with Dying Fetus, and I went and did the meet and greet with them, and they were all super nice. Jamie was just cool as shit. I told him about seeing them back in the day with Soulfly and like how they stole the fucking show. And his podcast is great. He's got a lot of great guests to tell a lot of interesting stories on there. But moving on, this album, Jesus, let me see.
Oh, it's phenomenal, dude. It is so good.
Songs here. Promises, Burn the Lies, Before Dishonor, what is that? Puritan, Conceived Through an Act of Violence, Afflicted Past, Prepare for War, Not One Truth, Betrayed by Life. I love that, how that fucking song starts off. Mark My Words is a good one. Burial for the Living, Worlds Apart, Driven by Suffering. Man, as I'm reading these titles off, I can hear the fucking like hooks in these songs. I mean,
Right.
This album just, goddamn, like again, if you don't know, check this one out. This is a great one to start with. Hatebreed's put out a lot of cool records since then. I know like they barely play these songs unless they're like celebrating anniversary like tours, I guess. But like I've been a victim of being in a Hatebreed show, and he'll be like, "What song are we playing next?" And I'll yell a fucking song out, and he's like, "You got it, pal!" And they just start playing it. Like I think they're one of those bands who doesn't do set lists. They'll just like play whatever the fuck they want to play. And you know, as a kid going to a Hatebreed show, and yelling out a song, and then he like acknowledged it and played it for me, like that was so big to me. You know, Jamie Josser really knows how to make the fans fucking feel at home at their shows. And like I said, this album's a banger, man. For debut albums, there are some fucking killer songs on this record. If you don't know, check it the fuck out. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, beginning to end. I mean, as you were reading the titles, like I could, like you said, hear every song. Like, dude, from beginning to end, that album is just so
betrayed by life. I mean, oh god, like that they knew how to fucking catch you with those hooks on that record. It was just so well done. Some brilliant shit for hardcore. I mean, like I remember being so into hardcore music at that time, and just that record just.
Yeah,
there's very few hardcore albums that I still listen to. Snapcase Steps is one of them. That's an EP, but the Hatebreed Satisfaction is the Death of Desire is like I said, start to finish is a banger, man. Like
so
you
good.
cannot deny that record.
Good. Yeah, and the Hatebreed guys are awesome. Like I know Matt Byrne very well. I've filmed him for Sick Drummer a couple of times, and you know, he's gotten me into shows and gotten me into, you know, whatever. So shout out to Matt.
Yes,
for being an awesome guy.
Yes, I've talked to him a few times. Him and Jamie did an episode when Dying Fetus was about to release Wrong One to Fuck With. They did a listen through on that album, Matt and Jamie. And oh man, I if you pay for his podcast, you can probably go back and find that episode. But it's so fucking funny. Like oh shit, next stop, Moshville. Like the way they like hype it up, because you can hear them like amping up, like a breakdown's about to come. And like those two dudes, like Matt he's a smart dude. He knows a lot of death metal. He knows a lot of death metal. So like just him on that episode with Jamie, I was really impressed listening to these stories he was talking about. Like he knows his shit. He's a smart dude. He's a great drummer. And like I said, that band just live, the energy they bring, it's something else, man. Hatebreed is a very cool fucking band.
Absolutely.
Much respect to them for doing it for as long as they have. And like their following, man, their fans are they're so intense. Like I love that. It's like almost Slayer, like the way their fans are. It's great.
Very diehard fans for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, the way that I discovered Cephalic Carnage was actually I went to see Hatebreed. Initially, that was my initial intention for going. I'd never even heard of Cephalic Carnage, and they opened for Hatebreed, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So you know, I have them to thank for introducing me to one of my favorite bands. You know, Cephalic Carnage. But yeah, Hatebreed are every time they come through town, I try to go see Hatebreed just because they are so the energy and just everything is just so good. That band is.
Yeah, I don't have a single bad thing to say about that band. They're just they're the total package when it comes to music and live shows, and they put it all out there for their fans for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, getting into a band that would kind of calm things down a little bit, not really as hardcore or as energetic. Lies, all lies. 9 Inch Nails, Free Hate Machine, the debut album from 9 Inch Nails. This album, I don't even remember. I don't even know how to describe my feelings for 9 Inch Nails. The first time I ever saw the video for Head Like a Hole, because back in the early 90s, whenever I discovered 9 Inch Nails, just the video for Head Like a Hole was like, what is this? You know, I never really heard industrial music before, except for maybe Ministry here and there. But 9 Inch Nails were just, this album is not the best thing they've done, because that would be the Downward Spiral. But yeah, this album is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. This is an OG press that I bought from Ross, the ex-tour manager and merch guy for Cattle Decapitation. Bought this from Ross several years ago. The OG pressings in the liner notes there's no title track for the song Ring Finger. And this is how you're able to indicate an original, an OG 1989 pressing of the album. All of the songs have the titles before the lyrics, except for Ring Finger. So kind of cool to have an original pressing on vinyl. This has never been on the turntable. It's awesome to have in the collection, but yeah, I've got repressings that I'll listen to before I listen to this. This has been pressed 16 times. The original pressing was by TVT Records. This pressing, which is a 2000. No, I didn't even write down what or take a note of what year this was. I want to say it was 2010 or 2011. This alternate cover copy has a Queen cover as a bonus track, Get Down, Make Love, which is not available on any of the other pressings, and it was produced by Al Jorgensen of Ministry. So yeah, that's a pretty cool addition to have for this album, or pretty cool copy to have. But yeah, Pretty Hate Machine is just it's another one of those quintessential, like, if you're into industrial music or just, you know, heavy music at all, it is such a good album. There are so many bangers on this one. Sanctified, Down in It, Something I Can Never Have. That song, it just emotionally, it just has so many, you know, memories attached to it for me. And that song was on Natural Born Killers, I believe. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Something I Can Never Have was on Natural Born Killers, which Trent produced the soundtrack for that album. But yeah, such a good album.
Yeah,
such a good,
absolutely
phenomenal debut album from a band.
I think my introduction to that band was I think I saw the Happiness and Slavery music video.
Oh my God.
And I was just, yeah, I'd never heard anything quite like that before. And there was a buddy of mine that I used to hang out with, and he had told me that Nine Inch Nails was his favorite band, which I was like, oh, cool. I always see people wearing their T-shirts. And then I want to say like a few months later, Closer was like played everywhere on every radio station, MTV nonstop. Yeah. And the Downward Spiral, when I was in the 8th grade, that record came out, and that just like, that's a big game changer. I remember like owning that album and just first time ever feeling dirty listening to something.
Dude, I was gonna say your very first impression of them was seeing the video for Happiness and Slavery. That thing's like a snuff film.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. Like, I just
born.
But then I guess, you know, local radio stations around here would play like Down in It or had like a hole in the radio. But like, you know, I guess once they started becoming more popular, like their older stuff was getting a lot more airplay in the area. But yeah, Pretty Hate Machine was a pretty cool record. Like you said, there's some good ones on that record for sure.
Yeah.
Is Terrible Lie on that one, or is that on
yeah, it's Terrible Lies.
Yeah, that's a really fucking good one.
Yep. Terrible Lie, Down in It, Sanctified.
Yeah.
That's What I Get. Ring Finger. I mean, just the whole thing, dude. It's just so good.
Yeah. No, they Trent's a brilliant guy. I mean, his songwriting ability, I can't take anything away from what that guy has done. You know, like, I'm not a big fan of anything that came out after 94, but, you know, he I guess all these awards that he's winning proves me wrong, but
anyway. I was the same way, dude. Like after Downward Spiral, like, I didn't think that, you know, Nails could do anything better than that. And like the first impressions I had of everything off the Fragile was like, you know, we're in this together now, and The Hand That Feeds, and I was like, it's not the same Nine Inch Nails. So I kind of didn't pay attention to him for a long time. But I went back, you know, and started listening to their stuff again, and it just, they're so. I basically captured my enthusiasm for Nine Inch Nails, and I love the Fragile. I love, you know, everything they've done ever since. You know, some of it doesn't sit as well as others, but it's all still Nine Inch Nails. It just doesn't have that gritty, angsty, you know, darkness
sure.
that the Downward Spiral had. But
he knew how to evolve his sound without compromising what he was doing. He
Sure.
did a good job.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so my next one, and this is a very unique album because this has only happened to me a couple times in life where I've gone to a listening station at a music store and I put on the headphones to listen to an album, and within seconds I turn it off and go and buy it. The Dillinger Escape Plan, Calculating Infinity. Again, full length, folks. I know they had an EP before this, a couple of EPs before this, but this is a picture disc version that Relapse put out in 99, maybe 2000, I think, whenever this was pressed. I also have like a nice repressing of this with the cool stuff all over the cover there. But
yeah, I think that's one that I got. Yes.
There you go.
I think that's the same pressing I have, actually.
Yeah, I mean it got repressed a bunch of times. I thought this was the coolest looking one. I know they repressed Irony a couple years ago, but this album, I mean, talk about the groundbreaking albums. I never heard anything like this before, where like 1 second this band is like just spazzy playing, and then there's jazz, and then he's screaming again, and it was like nothing I'd ever heard before. And they went on to make more unique albums. They never wrote the same album twice. I'll just say that. But being a debut album, and anybody who had heard this band before, this was a great fucking record. I mean, Sugar Coated Sour. What a way to open a fucking record. Like I said, I had those headphones on for no more than 15 seconds, and I turned it off and bought this CD like so quickly. 43% burnt. That's like a fucking anthem for people. That song. Jim Fear, Destro's Secret, The Running Board, Clip the Apex, Accept Instruction, Calculating Infinity, Fourth Grade Dropout, Weekend Sex Change, Variations of a Cocktail Dress. This band, Ben Weinman is a very smart fella. He knows how to write some crazy ass shit. Chris Penny played drums on this record, who's also a great musician. I believe Liam Wilson's on it. Dimitri is their vocalist on this album before Greg joined the fold, and they put out many albums after that. But yeah, this is an album that just it changed the way I listen to music. I mean, I paid closer attention to so much stuff after listening to this record, because like this band is just, they're off the hook. It's hard to explain like how musically how brilliant this record is. I have I made a lot of friends over the last couple of years on the internet because of this band alone. I met some really neat people, one of which Bree, who collects a huge merch collector of Dillinger. She's got a really nice collection. A friend out in Australia, Kim, shout out to Kim and Bree. Kim, I met her at the final Dillinger show. I know they're about to reunite and play this album soon. So anybody who goes out to that's great. Another dude, Adam, who I went to the final show with, we met standing in line at a show that they played at a very tiny venue in DC. So I got a great connection because of this band. Met a lot of cool people and made a lot of neat friends. Jimmy Rhodes, man, because of this dude, like conversations we've had about this album. But yeah, I cannot say enough great things about this record. It may make your head explode or start to smoke. I don't know. There's some fucking shit on this record that you may not be able to comprehend or wrap your head around. But cat's getting fed. But yeah, as far as debut albums, like hands down, this is a fucking powerful fucking record, and quite a debut record for a band that went on to make some really cool music after this.
Agreed. Like we said in the early episodes, my first impression of Dillinger was the Ironies of Dead Scene EP, but after going back and listening to Calculating was just wow,
dude. Yeah.
Wow. It's still, for the time that whenever it came out, it was like there was nothing like it. I'm glad that they're getting back together and playing those shows where they're doing that album in its entirety. Melanie and I are going out to Brooklyn to see, the opening night of that with Car Bomb. But yeah, I'm excited to see Calculating performed in its entirety just because it's such a landmark album.
I hope
You
they
know?
do it all, like the filler tracks and all. I didn't.
Mhm.
There's a track I didn't read off there because it's just a bunch of symbols. But I mean, I've seen them
Anything
play the
else?
song "Calculating Infinity" before. I've definitely seen them do that song. So
Mhm.
that's not something hard for them to break out with.
Right.
But
Oh yeah, good album.
yeah,
Good album for this episode.
yeah.
For sure.
I was going to let you upstage me on this episode, Jeff. I had to break out some bangers.
I still got one more.
All
Don't fuck with me, Nick. We're not done yet. Okay, so my last contribution for this episode, we're definitely not getting into the sophomore release from this band because it's obviously, more people know about their sophomore release than they do their debut, but that doesn't mean it's any better.
Who could you be talking about, Jeff?
My final album is Nirvana. The debut album from Nirvana, Bleach. This album way is overlooked, is underrated.
Oh yeah. Oh
it's,
yes.
it's absolutely not Nevermind, which unborn children have heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. I mean, it's like a rite of passage. Everybody knows Nevermind. Everybody knows Nevermind. Everybody loves Nevermind. Everybody talks about Nevermind, which is a phenomenal album in itself. But Bleach, man, heavy. It's the world's introduction to Nirvana, and I didn't know about Bleach until after I had heard Nevermind. Then I went back and listened to this after the fact. But what an album, dude! I mean, this entire recording for this album in 1989 cost $606.17 to record this album, and I don't think you can even park in a parking lot of a studio for that cost anymore, let alone record an entire album. Dale Crover of the Melvins plays on the tracks Floyd the Barber and Paper Cuts. For those of you that don't know that, Dale Crover was on 2 tracks on this album. The first episode we ever did, one of the topics was most valuable records or most cherished records, and I picked the wrong one. I absolutely picked the wrong record because this thing that's in a frame is a second press of this album from 1989. This is a second pressing of this phenomenal album from Nirvana, and this has been a frame ever since the night I bought it. Just because it is an actual barcode matrix verified second pressing of Bleach. The second pressing was released in 1989. There were 2,000 copies pressed on black vinyl. The first pressing, just a couple months before this, was released on a white vinyl, and there were 1,000 copies of that. So, on the cover here, it has another guitar player, Jason. Here, I'll show you the copy without the Walmart sticker on it. This guy right here, Jason Everman, is listed in the credits as writing and contributing to the album. He wasn't on the album. He just performed with them live, so they put him in the credits, which I didn't know until I was researching this. I thought he was on the album. But yeah, Jason Everman was, whenever Nirvana started out, was their second guitar player. And then they went without a guitar player for a while, and they brought Pat Smear in after they released In Utero and blah, 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 blah. The box set, this one here, this book with extra tracks on it, has a live performance that was never heard from February 9th of 1990, which was never released before this pressing. These were taken from the original master recordings, the Walmart exclusive moon gray vinyl, which I guess is supposed to be the same color as the name, and I don't know why moon gray. I guess because of the color of the the band's thing, whatever. But these were taken from the original, remastered from the original tapes, which is a really cool thing, to have something on vinyl that was taken from the original master recordings, but you had to go to Walmart to buy the record, which I, of course, did. Once I found out there was another pressing at Walmart, had to go buy socks or toothpaste or whatever and pick up a Nirvana record. Why not? Sounds like a good idea. But yeah, that Bleach is just heavy. All just so good and
very overlooked record for sure.
A lot of Melvin's influence, especially from the late 80s. You could hear where the influences that Buzz and Kurt, who went to high school together, you can tell in a lot of those songs. Like they sound like a lot of older Melvin's tracks. So
yeah, that's a good one. I was thinking about Floyd the Barber or Negative Creep. And there's some phenomenal songs on that fucking record.
Swap Meet, Mr. Mustache, Love Buzz,
yeah.
Negative Creep, About a Girl, Floyd the School, Big Cheese.
School's a fucking great one. Yeah, Big Cheese too. Yeah, there's some good ones on that record. I remember after Nevermind came out, checking that one out, and was just like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Almost a punk rock band, but
yeah,
they it's some good shit. They have some they keep really finding old stuff to release. There's videos of them playing like bookstores and shit like that in like the 90s before anything.
Right.
So
oh yeah.
All right. So my last one, this is definitely their first album, even though they went by another name at one before this. But this is Bless the Martyr and Kiss the Child as performed by Norma Jean.
Norma Jean.
This is another album that I was at a Hot Topic and somebody was talking about this record. It was on one of the listening stations, and I put the headphones on. I want to say 10 seconds into that first song, I put the headphones down and bought the CD. This band is just, this record is insane. I learned that they recorded the album live, so that's why it sounds the way it does. It's very raw and just like dirty. That's the best way to describe it. But this is a fucking killer fucking record. It's released in 2002 on Solid State Records, Tooth and Nail Records. First time it was pressed was in 2022 for Furnace Fest. It got pressed 4 times after that. They did like a pre-order for the ones on the people who didn't go to Furnace Fest to get it. And, like I remember like setting a timer and everything. And this is one of those albums that like broke the internet. And I didn't get like one of the super rare pressings. I got this like cream colored and oh shit. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. But I went and saw this band live maybe like a year or so after I heard this album with a buddy of mine, and like they played this like weird little pool hall, and unfortunately the guy who did vocals on this album was not in the band anymore. They had someone else, and like this guy just he didn't sound anywhere close to what this dude sounded on the record, so it kind of like killed it for me. And then he had a lot of Mick Jagger moves on stage is all I'll say. It was weird, He was a nice guy. I have nothing bad to say about the dude, but he just didn't sound like he fit correctly into this band. And a lot of people were like arguing with me. He's like, no, that guy was great, but I didn't see it that way. I think the original singer went on to start a band called The Chariot. But after this album, they got or after that particular guy that I saw them with, they got another guy who became the vocalist that they would tour with and put several albums out. I think Ross Robinson produced an album by them. But this album, let me see if I can find these song titles. I don't think The Entire World is Counting on Me, and they don't even know it. Face, Memphis will be laid to waste, creating something out of nothing only to destroy it. Pretty soon, I don't know what, but something is going to happen. the shotgun message. Sometimes it's our mistakes that make our greatest ideas. I used to hate cell phones, but now I hate car accidents. It was as if the dead man stood up in the air. These are really unique song titles. Even like I said, the way the album is produced, like as performed by Norma Jean. Like they had a very unique approach to this record. Like I said, the way it was recorded live, so they got that really raw sound out of it. But if you've never heard this album before, like I don't know, a lot of people have like that metalcore is like a dirty word and they don't want to support it or whatever. But like this record was incredible. I remember listening to it and just playing it for a lot of friends, and even they were impressed with what was going on. This album art is fucking creepy as shit. I mean, look at that little fucking kid's face.
Yeah.
This was a cool record. It was one that as soon as I saw it was being I knew I had to have a copy of it because it was, like I said, just the sound, the quality of the sound of the recording of that record was so good. Like something I wanted to be able to put on needle and play and listen through my stereo because, like, particular albums like that I really enjoy. And that was a great debut album by a band that went on to make better albums, I guess, in other people's opinion. Not so much for me. I like this one better than any of the other ones. So
I would describe that album as bringing a knife to a gunfight.
There you go.
Like bringing
there's a lyric in there somewhere for sure. But yeah, that's. I mean, you saying that right now is making that dun, 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 dun part go off. Like, I mean, again, people go listen to that record because Jeff just made a great reference from that album. It's something else. It's very unique. I mean, I'm sure a lot of bands probably tried to replicate that sound since then, but what a fucking, I mean, like you press play and it just like it goes straight into it. I mean, like I saw them live with Under Oath and then a few days later with Dillinger. And I remember being outside with a bunch of friends and Greg from Dillinger was there with the guy who did vocals, so I didn't really care for it. And he asked us, what did you guys think of Norma Jean? And all my friends were like, oh, they sucked. And they were doing that just because the singer was standing right there. And he made a big boo-boo face, but we were all laughing so hard because, like, obviously Norma Jean killed it that night. They were a great live band. I think they still are. I last time I saw them, I think might have been at an Ozfest. Yeah, I mean, like, they evolved their sound. They got a big fan base following, and yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen them. I mean, I wouldn't know any of their stuff now, but whenever around the time that album came out, Buster and Tony Peck, who I was in a band with at the time, we were cruising around our hometown one night, and they pulled me over and they were like, "You need to listen to this because we're music superiors, and you need to listen to everything we say." And I took it and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't think I ever gave the CD back to him. It's so good. Just that album is phenomenal. And like I said, I don't think I've heard anything from him since, but yeah. Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child is stellar. It pisses whenever we were talking about this list and, said you were putting that in there. I was like, fuck, I need that on vinyl. Why do you have that and not me? But I'll fix that soon. I will have a copy on vinyl because it's a phenomenal record.
It absolutely is. All right, so that's basically it for our first albums. Jeff, did you get anything new in the mail recently?
Not recently, but I do have something I want to showcase. My extremely awesome wife went to the local record store that I was at like a month or so before that, talking about this particular copy that the store had on the wall, and I was like, I have to have this copy. It's such a thing that I have to have. She bought me for Christmas 12 Golden Country Greats by Ween. It is a second pressing. I was under the impression it was a first pressing, but it is a second pressing that does not have Muhammad Ali's voice on it. They did a Mr. Richard Smoker, one of the tracks on the album. They have a thing at the end where Dean introduces the different members of the band, and he says, "And introducing Mr. Muhammad Ali," and then they did a sound clip of somebody like incoherently saying, "Ooh," and apparently they got sued by Muhammad Ali or somebody in his camp, and they had to remove it from the audio. But aside from that, I mean, this album is is so good. I'm Holding You, Japanese Cowboy, Piss Up a Rope. I mean, dude, this album is so good. It's just a fun record. Powder Blue, Miss Richard Smoker, You Were the Fool. It is a great record, an absolutely great. Besides the fact that it's one of the only country records I own, it is just fun, and it is the only original Ween pressing that I have. The one that's not a bootleg. I've got a bootleg of Pure Guava, but yeah, this is the only actual copy of a Ween album that I own. So, a couple months old, but still good enough for me to feature in a recently acquired, just because it's fucking Ween, you know.
No, for sure. For sure. I'm getting the sun on me here. All right. Yeah. I just recently got something that I ordered off of Discogs. It's not a Ween album for sure, but ooh, if the sun's hitting this hard. Big Timers still
Big Timers.
12-inch single. Yeah. For
y'all. That sun is atrocious.
For all you see Cash Money. For all you Birdman and Manny Fresh fans out there. Yeah, this is just a very catchy song that came out in the early 2000s that I don't know. I overheard it at work the other day and I was like, man, I haven't fucking heard this song in ages. And tracked it down on vinyl. You know, hip hop singles, they're not very hard to fucking find because I guess they get pressed so much for DJs, and then when they're done using them, they get tossed, and they're like basically used CDs, basically. But yeah, I just wanted to have something like this on in my collection because you don't have to own the whole album, and
sure,
just to have it on vinyl. So yeah. That was the last thing that I received in the mail, but
very cool.
But yeah, that's it for me this week. That's all I got.
All I got.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess we can end it on that note. Thank you everybody again for tuning in on episode 8, First Albums. This was a fun one. Maybe we got to do a sophomore albums episode. I mean, there's always that argument, which was better, the first or the second album.
Which was better. Yeah, and it's already been brought up several times throughout the episode, so I guess we're going to have to do it at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. And we haven't done this in a while. Thank you. Shout out to J.R. Hayes and Mold Dominion for plugging us and posting our stuff on their Instagram. Greatly appreciated. Thank you to everybody that gives a hand in letting the world know that this is a thing. And we didn't thank JR in the last episode. We forgot to. So shout out JR. Thank you very much.
There goes our royalty check this week. Not getting any money from JR this week. Yeah, thank you, JR, again for everything, for inspiring us to do this, and see you in a couple weeks.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you everybody for sitting through our longest episode so far. What were we at, an hour and a half right now?
Yeah.
Jesus, dude. We're gonna start splitting these up into segments.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.